the king gave me a court. I treasured him like nothing else, afraid he'd break if I held him too tight, afraid he'd melt if I kept him too close. Yet when the palace coup came, he leveled a sword at my throat. Forced me to jump from the palace. Good girl, Quinn. It won't hurt a bit. I smiled, swallowing the tears. Turned and leapt. Liar. It hurt like hell. When I opened my eyes again, I was 16. The king said, Quinn, I hear you want a court. I refused with righteous gravity. No. Give me the full 3-year college prep, 5-year practice exam set instead. I'll grind those papers to pulp. 1. Even as I plummeted from the palace wall, I couldn't understand. As a princess's court, Adrian had wealth, status, every luxury. Why betray me? I hoisted him from bond servant to the second most powerful man in Vance. He wanted power, I secured him an office. He wanted to investigate his origins, I placed him in the high tribunal. I gave him everything short of enshrining him in incense. And now, silver sword in hand, armor gleaming, he beheaded my king, hounded my crown to death, let enemy soldiers humiliate me. Finally he drove me onto the palace parapet, demanding I die for the realm. His voice was as warm and lazy as ever. Highness, if you don't die, the people won't be pacified. I gazed at the sea of commoners below, spectators at a show. Every face glared hatred, every fist shook with rage. Kill her. Kill her. Kill her. That instant, I saw the light romantic idiocy ruins lives. Years spent spoiling Adrian had cost me every scrap of public favor. To them I was a wanton, meddling princess who wrecked the state. Now kingdom lost, family dead, humiliation complete, they still wanted me to atone with my life. I gathered my cloak against the winter wind and smoothed tangled hair. How long have you waited for this day? Adrian stared back, features painted like an ink portrait, eyes rimmed red. Good girl, Quinn. It won't hurt. A soft laugh escaped me. I jumped. For a moment my body felt pulverized, agony radiating through every bone. Adrian lied again, it hurt unbearably. But within seconds an icy system voice echoed in my skull. Capital dies for her kingdom, executed below the palace. Congratulations player number 003, quest complete, lavish dungeon rewards unlocked. Sounded familiar. Then came Adrian's hesitant murmur. The romance route is finished. What happens to Serena now? Did she really die? Silence. 2. When I opened my eyes once more, I was 15 again, days before my 16th birthday. I rode my princess litter through the streets in grand procession. Originally I was a spawn-in. My real-world life had been a lazy, single slog, I died loveless. After death I became the kingdom's only princess. King and queen adored me. I was also the only princess granted her own Vance estate before coming of age. Probably because I'd been alone too long back there, even strays looked cute. So on my 16th birthday, when the king asked what gift I wanted, I rubbed my hands and said, a court, please. No precedent existed, princesses were supposed to ask for a prince, not skip straight to a court. But my king indulged me. He instantly issued orders to select, concubines, courtesans. Most courts were sons of disgraced officials, bond slaves by law because their fathers had committed crimes. In my previous life, during this very outing, I encountered Adrian's family being marched to the border. He wore prison garb, gaunt, blood-striped by guards' whips, beautiful as shattered porcelain, collapsing right in front of my litter. Love at first sight idiot that I was. I carried him to Vance, nursed him, ignored his traitor blood. The king only said, as long as he's happy. One wrong step, every following step wrong. It had all been premeditated, from day one Adrian simply used me. 3. And now same time loop, same street. I lifted the curtain. There at the far end shuffled the chained convicts. I scanned the line and, sure enough, found Adrian's face again. Past and present flooded back in a roar. I dropped the curtain at once. Bad omen, I told the waiting maid. Terrified, she slipped outside and barked, outrageous. Who dares block Taylor's litter? Clear the way, now. The escort guards, quaking, cracked whips over the prisoners. Make way for the princess unless you want to lose your heads. Through the window I watched Adrian take a lash across the back, blood blooming, and crumple in the road, exact replay of last life. But sympathy and lust had evaporated. In that first run, after the enemy seized the capital, Adrian, now Grand General, sent word. The troops have toiled, let the princess serve them as camp whore. Countless filthy hands groped me. Had someone not cut those soldiers down, I clenched my fingers until nails threatened flesh. The maid murmured, Highness, a prisoner has collapsed in the road. Should we? Calmly I rearranged my sleeves. Drive over him. Over him, Highness? Are my orders optional now? 4. I raised my voice on purpose, everyone outside could hear. The maid, pale, relayed the command to the driver. Chin in hand, I watched through the pain as the man lay beneath the wheels. His lips seemed to twitch. Then Adrian opened dazed, mist-slick eyes and lifted himself on trembling arms. Apologies. I disturbed the princess's progress. This bond will move aside at once. I laughed coldly, stepped out, and stood over him. Look at me. He was parchment thin, cheekbones sharp, lips colorless. Raising his head revealed a pale throat and a fluttering Adam's apple. Still the brothel look. Last life, was my heart breaded and deep-fried? Irritated, I snapped at the maid. By kingdom law, what's the penalty when a bond startles a royal carriage? In the previous round I'd pitted this puppy and carried him home only to invite a viper. This time I meant to crush him before he struck. The maid caught my tone and proclaimed, bonds of criminal households who alarm officials or royalty. Tongue excised, limbs broken. Acceptable. Get on with it. Not a quiver of hesitation in my voice. Adrian stared, gorgeous eyes wide. I smirked back. Let's see if you dare reload down this same path. I turned to re-enter the litter, but a crisp female voice rang out behind me. He may be a guilty bond, but he never intentionally blocked you. Such punishment is excessive, Highness. I glanced back. Among the crowd stood a willowy beauty, plainly dressed, hair pinned only with a wooden stick, spine straight. Before I could answer, a maid whispered, that is Ivy, daughter of General Van Chuan, lately returned from the frontier. Rewarded with the title Countess for her father's merits. She ladles congee to beggars every 1st and 15th, the people call her the saintly lady. The instant Ivy stepped forward, Adrian's gaze slid to her. Even without the hint, I recognized her at my last birthday banquet. Her sword dance dazzled half the capital's young lords. After the feast some drunken noble accosted her, Crown happened by, rescued her, then asked me to petition the king so he could marry her and preserve her honor. She became my sister-in-law. The very night she was ennobled, Adrian, reeking of wine, stumbled into my chambers, murmuring Quinn over and over, claiming he had loved me from first sight. Watching him watch Ivy now, realization struck. That night's Quinn wasn't Quinn at all. It was Serena. 5. I studied the pair. In the prior timeline, Ivy never pleaded in the street. Because I'd altered events, declining to fish Adrian out. ID collided with her earlier. I sneered. So, Lady Grayson, what would you have me do? Before Ivy could answer, Adrian spoke up, eyes lowered. Many thanks, my lady, but the bond deserves punishment for frightening her highness. Their secret, smoldering glances nauseated me. Lady Grayson is right, my penalty was severe. Very well, today's matter ends here. Let the exile continue. I'm returning to my estate. I flicked my sleeves and re-entered the litter. Ivy clearly hadn't expected me to give way so easily. For a moment I stood frozen in the street. The surrounding townsfolk had no idea what was going on, they simply showered Ivy with praise for her beauty and kindness. Wait, I said, turning to her. Something else? Highness is just going to leave, she asked. What should I compose an apology letter for a criminal bond? Ivy flushed. Of course not. Yet Ivy keeps pleading for this guilty bond. You two must be old friends. Very well, I'll lift his bond status and gift him to you. How's that? Without waiting for an answer, I finalized the decree. Adrian stared in shock. Princess. I was already ordering the attendants to move on. Last life I'd kept Adrian beside me in the street, later he became my court. This life I bestowed him on Ivy. Whether they ended up happily or sneaking around, neither outcome would touch me again. 6. Free of Adrian, I exhaled in relief. Back at Vance I barred the gates. No visitors were received. I transcribed every crucial checkpoint of my previous life onto paper. I only regretted not memorizing the 36 stratagems and Sun Tzu in the real world. Needing a book and not having it is maddening, I was ready to memorize one until it crumbled. Days passed with no news of Adrian. I sent servants to snoop, apparently Ivy had never taken him home that day. Understandable, Adrian's father had been beheaded for bribery and murder, the whole household was seized as bond property. Even with her father's reputation, Ivy dared not drag a criminal bond into Grayson. Soon, though, my watchers reported that a handsome, silver-masked young man had appeared at Ivy's side and never left. I drew a slow breath. I'd guessed right, Adrian and Ivy had known each other long ago, and he wasn't finished with me. I was his target. If he failed the quest, the penalty would be brutal. I scrawled a huge X across the page. Luckily, I already had a backup plan. I appealed to Crown and had every shrewd, talented retainer sent to me. 3 cobblers with their wits combined equal Zhuge Liang, after all. To my surprise, Vance was suddenly swarming with visitors. Rumors spread that the princess entertained scholars in broad daylight, hoarding handsome geniuses behind golden walls. Seems a path skipped in one life must still be walked in the next. 7. Autumn arrived quickly. I was summoned to the palace. Seeing the king's gentle face, tears rolled down my cheeks. King, I said, performing a grand curtsy. The king blinked in surprise. As the kingdom's only princess, I'd grown up spoiled, he had never burdened me with ceremony. Quinn, you'll soon come of age, any wishes? He asked. I was taken aback. Wishes? The king hesitated, the queen looked awkward. At last he said, we hear you want a court. Who started that gossip? In my last life a court had ruined me. Dare I ask for another? Recalling that misery, I shook my head firmly. No. Please give me a stack of 3-year college 5-year simulation books, I'll grind them to shreds. Neither king nor queen were time walkers, they didn't understand. So rumors lie. My dear, he is sweet, how could she chase such things? I wasn't opposed to study, I'd simply been burned before. The king continued, still, you're of marriageable age. Your queen and I intend to choose a prince for you at autumn. Will you consent? Here came the plotline again. Last life they'd planned to pick my prince from the new top scholars, but I'd been besotted with Adrian and refused, taking him as court instead. This life, to keep Adrian at bay, I needed a candidate strong enough to block his quest. Quinn obeys the king, I trust you'll choose a worthy husband. 8. Autumn was held at the riding grounds. The kingdom prizes martial skill, the king had won his throne on horseback. Every unmarried young noble in capital could attend. I deliberately chose a blazing red riding habit. As I rode out on a chestnut mare, I spotted Ivy. Unsurprisingly, she wore red as well. The masked man holding her horse was obviously Adrian in disguise. I clenched the reins. Last life Adrian had led my horse, too. During the hunt my mount had bolted, I'd almost plunged over a cliff before he saved me. And that was the moment I lost my heart to him. I gave a cold laugh, nothing but staged drama. Just then a warm, magnetic voice spoke beside me. Princess seems in poor spirits today. I turned, a white-clad youth swung effortlessly onto his horse, graceful as drifting cloud, agile as soaring dragon. I narrowed my eyes. Quentin, heir of loyal Lord Zhongbois, my least favorite person from the academy days. Top of every class, while I barely scraped by, nothing irritated a poor student more than a smug prodigy. Seeing you ruins my mood, I said, nudging my horse onward. Quentin kept pace. Choosing a prince and still unhappy? I glanced at him. If you know this is my bride test, why join Autumn? Fancy being consort? He snorted. Everyone knows a consort's career is over. Lucky for me my title's hereditary, I don't need office. I studied him, recalling. Last life the king had favored Quentin, but I'd publicly rejected him and picked Adrian, turning Quentin into a laughingstock. When I later helped Adrian investigate his father's case, Quentin threw obstacles at every turn. When the capital fell, Adrian offered Quentin surrender, he refused, fought alone, and died riddled with arrows. Looking now at the plain-robed youth, I tested the water. Since you don't care about prospects and I don't have a favorite, shall we make do with each other? Before I finished, Quentin raised his bow and let an arrow fly straight at me. 9. I yelped and jerked aside. The shaft thudded into a thicket where a startled fawn sprang away. Quentin grinned shamelessly. Oops, missed. What were you saying, Highness? I said watch out, someone may feed your horse croton beans. Thanks for the warning. Luckily my mount was raised on croton, no effect. You win. Honored. I must have lost my mind, imagining this clown could counter Adrian. I dug in my heels and galloped off before his idiocy rubbed off on me. I'd stationed skilled guards on the fringes and planned to stay safely outside the hunting zone, yet an accident still struck. My horse suddenly bolted into the thick woods. I'd checked it the night before. Had Adrian tampered again? The animal thundered ahead, heading straight for the cliff of my last life fall. Cursing the system's reach, I prepared to leap clear. But before I could, a long arrow whistled and buried itself in the mare's hind leg. Everything went black as I crashed to the ground. When my sight cleared, 7 black-clad assassins ringed me, every blade aimed to kill. I sneered and began counting. Before I reached 3, a silver-masked man in black slipped an arm around me and parried the swords. Are you hurt? His warm voice asked, anxious. Ivy hovered behind him, pale. An assassin lunged at his back. Dylan, watch out. I shrieked. Adrian dodged, holding me close. I clutched his collar and shouted to Ivy, forget me, protect princess. He stared, stunned. I launched into theatrics, pushing him away. I'll draw them, go guard Highness. Her life is worth far more than ours. The attackers hesitated, then noticed Ivy beside me, both of us in red. How could they tell which was the real princess? Better to kill both. Several peeled off and charged Ivy. I'd done my homework. The general's daughter looked hardy but had never trained, she could barely lift a sword. Since she was so eager to throw herself at the blade, of course I'd help her succeed. Ivy had no time to dodge, an assassin's knife slashed her arm. Blood sheeted down and she toppled from her horse. In instant panic she cried, I'm not the princess, you've got the wrong girl. I chimed in just as fast, right, she's not the princess, let her go. Come for me instead, my life is worth giving for the princess. At that, the assassins who'd been holding back all surged toward Ivy. She was seconds from death under their blades. Adrian's eyes narrowed, his long sword whitening his knuckles, yet he locked me in an iron embrace. He didn't move a single step. What on earth? At a moment like this you don't race to Ivy, you cling to me? I dropped my head and sank my teeth into his wrist, fair skin tore and blood welled. The pain jerked through him, but he still wouldn't let go. His gaze held 1,000 unspoken words. Quinn, this time I won't let go so easily. Enough, just spare me. Pretty please. Just then a flexible sword flashed straight for my heart. Forced to choose, Adrian released me and shoved me behind him. He raised his blade to parry, and the newcomer sneered. Keep standing there and Grayson will be a ghost. Fail to win the princess and lose your real mistress, nice bargain. I looked up, it was Quentin, the very man I'd shaken off minutes ago. Adrian's eyes darkened, as though weighing impossible odds. From the dirt, Ivy screamed in desperation, "Dylan, help me." 10. In the end, Adrian charged, carving a path to Ivy and shielding her with his body. Quentin, still mounted in front of me, stretched out a hand. He pulled me onto his stallion in one smooth sweep. My pulse hammered as I watched Adrian scramble between flashing steel. The assassin struck viciously, yet every time he slipped free by a hair. "Enjoying the show?" a teasing voice murmured in my ear. I tilted my head and found Quentin's clean-shaven chin inches away. "You followed me?" "Well, you just proposed we make do with each other." I thought it over. "Sure, why not?" "You absolutely did not hear me say that." "Then why aren't you down there saving people?" "My life creed has 2 clauses, 1 none of your business, 2 none of mine." No surprise decency isn't in Quentin's job description. Though those words feel weird coming from someone who's supposed to be ancient. I gaped at him. "Odd change, even same?" Quentin stared back. "I only know the 99 times table." "He's a time walker too." Soon Royal Guard shouts echoed through hunting. Seeing their strike fail, the assassins broke off and retreated without a second glance. But I wasn't letting this chance evaporate. I whistled. Dozens of hidden guards poured from hunting's shadows and ringed the killers. Adrian, dripping blood, cradled Ivy and fought for breath. Yet his eyes pinned me and Quentin with burning intensity. We two looked like front-row gossip mongrels comparing notes. Adrian forced the words out. "Highness, you dash." Before I could answer, Quentin cut in, "You what? Expecting Princess to leap down and weep over your wounds?" "Thanks, Quentin, my personal mouthpiece." I swept a cool glance over the battered Adrian and looked away. 11. Every assassin was hauled to the Royal for questioning. Ivy, badly wounded, was carried to Grayson for treatment. Adrian earned a royal reward for saving me. Last life had played out the same, because he rescued me, the king erased his bond status. This time I would not allow the rerun. I stepped forward first. "The man who truly saved me is heir of the loyal Marquis estate. Of course I'm grateful to this other gentleman. If he and Lady Grayson hadn't distracted the assassins, he would be a corpse. Still, I do not know which minister's son this masked hero might be. Why hide behind silver?" I let my gaze rest on Adrian, stripped of my help this round. He had no path out of bond registry. By placing the laurels on Quentin's head, I forced Adrian's next move. The moment he removed the mask, his face would betray him, a felon's son who should be in exile, surfacing at a royal autumn, coincidentally intercepting assassins on my behalf. The king was no fool. Sheltering Grayson would be implicated. So would Ivy. After my declaration, the kneeling Adrian lifted his head. Eyes brimming with unspoken protests, he finally rasped. "This bond's face is ruined and lowly. Thanks to Lady Grayson's charity, I serve as a household guard. The savior is the heir, this servant dares claim no reward." The king studied Adrian with suspicion. Quentin, silent till now, spoke up, "Heroes are heroes, whatever their birth. Court physicians have arts to mend even ugly scars." I shot Quentin a startled glance. ID backed the right horse, he was Adrian's nemesis. Adrian had no escape now, refusal would only deepen suspicion. At length he pulled the mask free. I sucked in a breath. His upper face was a lattice of new cuts piled upon old welts, even Adrian's true father wouldn't recognize him. He'd sliced himself raw, clearly he'd prepared for this day. The king's doubts dissolved, he tossed Adrian a pouch of gold and jewels, then turned to Quentin with undisguised fatherly appraisal. "Loyal Marquis has raised a fine son. You saved the princess and topped the autumn lists, yet you're unwed. Fancy my Serena?" I stared at Quentin. What I'd said earlier was only bait for Adrian, surely he wouldn't take it literally. Reading my look, Quentin bowed. "Your Majesty honors me, but my heart is already pledged." The king had almost named him prince and he declined. "Oh? To whom?" Without flinching, Quentin replied, "I have long loved Lady Ivy of House Grayson. May your Majesty grant your blessing." 12. gasps rippled through the hall. Even Adrian gaped at Quentin. I felt strangely hollow, a breath of relief sucked away by an emotion I couldn't name. Quentin loves Ivy? Well, last life he repeatedly targeted Adrian. Was Ivy the reason? But he had never proposed to her then. Adrian and Ivy had never even met there. And tonight in hunting, Quentin watched Ivy bleed with the detachment of a stranger, no trace of affection. So why reject me and ask for Ivy? My temples throbbed. This timeline was rewriting itself faster than I could follow. Even I, reborn, had no map to the ending. The king was obviously displeased. He withheld consent, muttering that the wounded girl needed her father's approval first. After Autumn's open courtship became capital gossip. He sauntered to Grayson every other day, playing the smitten suitor to perfection. The saying goes, a steadfast rogue can melt a chaste maid. Once Ivy recovered, she began returning his visits. I knew nothing here was simple. 13. Night fell. I dressed in full regalia and invited Quentin to the Lantern Festival. Reason 1, we were both time walkers. Reason 2, I suspected he knew far more than he let on. Half the appointed hour had passed an apricot before he strolled in, cradling a rabbit lantern in one hand and nibbling osmanthus cake with the other. Leaning against the doorframe, he drawled. Did your princess wait long? I glared. When did you walk? He cocked his head. Walk where? Oh, you mean these clothes? Put them on this morning, haven't changed. Rather dashing, don't you think? Stop playing. 9 times table, time walker to time walker, cards on the table. Quentin finally dropped the clown act. He sat, poured wine, spun the cup between his fingers. Then tell me, princess, when did you walk? I walked last life, spawn in. I hid nothing. To topple Adrian the quest giver I needed allies. One woman alone could not save a kingdom. His brows lifted in amused surprise. Fancy that. You wouldn't also happen to have reloaded, would you? I'd meant to probe, instead I hit jackpot. You crossed and reloaded too? He shook his head. Precisely, this is my third reload. Third? I'd only rebirthed once, he'd looped 3 times. I schooled my face to stillness. No wonder you've been obstructing Adrian at every turn, though you two had no quarrel this life. Since you're on your 3rd loop, you already know Adrian will sell the kingdom to the enemy and burn everything. He nodded. I know more. In the first 2, princess died ugly deaths. The man never stabs anywhere but the heart. I retched blood. I want to save myself, save our kingdom. Whose side are you on? What do you think? From the teasing glint in his eyes I understood a great deal. He was an ally, in the last loop, after all, he had guarded the capital alone, horse and rider, to the end. I asked him why he planned to marry Ivy. Quentin stared at me, astonished. You really don't know yet? In the last run, your ruin was Ivy's doing. I stared at him in equal shock. Wasn't it because I trusted Adrian without a shred of caution and finally ended up broken? Seems you honestly had no idea. I've reloaded twice and finally get it, that Adrian liked Ivy first life, because of you she died, so he tortured you to death. Second life, you didn't get her killed, but you were so love-addled you obeyed him in everything, and still you met the same fate. My fingers clenched. Once had been plenty, but apparently there was more. I took a long breath. So asking for Ivy means declaring war on Adrian. He's a quest giver, every one of those comes with a cheat level system. We can't take him lightly. Quentin leaned in abruptly, his handsome, pale face inches from mine. You think we two are the only ones who came back? I'd swear Adrian has reloaded as well. Adrian also reborn? I'd suspected it, the look in his eyes during the last meetings had felt off. Quentin was too close, a faint aroma of osmanthus cake lingered on his breath. I half turned away, embarrassed. Even if he's reborn, what does you marrying Ivy do to him? His target is still you. But if someone else has captured your heart, does that count as a quest failure? Your Highness, perhaps you don't understand men, especially a scum one. If he's back and sees the woman who once adored him now in another man's arms, slipping out of control, if that same man steals both girls he cared about, what do you think he'll do? I stared at him impassively. You're truly despicable. Thank you. I loathe playing the gentleman. Playing the rogue is much more fun. Watch, let's wager on it. Tonight Adrian won't resist sneaking into Vance. Quentin said it with a light laugh, then swung an arm around me and guided me to an apricot window overlooking the long, lantern-lit avenues. See those lights? They're easy enough to protect. Everything hinges on what you choose this time. I didn't push his hand away. I only whispered, back then, when you fought to keep me from being defiled by soldiers, was that part of the act too? Yes, in the darkness of the last life, this same man had lifted me out of the fire. Back then his clothes too had carried that faint scent of osmanthus cake. A long time passed without a reply. I thought he'd gone deaf again. Finally he sighed and pressed a rabbit lantern into my hand, his gaze bright. That part wasn't acting. Any man with spine would have done the same. 14. Word of my secret rendezvous with Quentin at Apricot spread quickly. According to plan, I didn't return to Vance until deep night. Not long after I lay down, a cloying sweetness floated in. Holding my breath, I pressed a wet towel to nose and mouth. Footsteps moved faintly within the bedchamber. Beyond the bed curtains a tall, slender silhouette appeared. I snapped my eyes shut and feigned sleep. The curtain lifted and long, pale fingers brushed my cheek. A familiar voice, puzzled, murmured, "Quinn, what happened? Why won't you look at me any longer? You loved only me, didn't you?" I swallowed the bile rising in my throat. Yet here you are, flirting with that ruffian. Do you know how it shreds my heart? Once upon a time, your eyes and heart held no one but me. What changed for you to turn like this time? His breath closed in, his fingers traced my throat to rest above my collarbone. The instant they reached my robe, a hand shot from under the quilt, locking around his wrist, and a mocking voice popped out. "Look, a bona fide lecher, Highness, you've got quite the following. Want me to scooch over so he can join us in bed?" I bolted upright, playing my shock to the hilt, and leaned against Quentin. "Who are you, trespassing in my chambers?" Tonight Adrian wore no daytime mask, his face was flawless, without a single scar. So during the day he'd begged a favor from his system and used an illusion. Still on his knees, Adrian stared, stunned. Quentin's grip clamped harder on his wrist. The initial shock in Adrian's eyes turned to raging fire. "Why are you in his bed?" Quentin tipped his head toward me. "Highness, he's asking you. What kind of romantic mess did you drag me into? If he's furious he might kill me on the spot." I rolled my eyes. Trust Quentin to outsnark everyone. This was part of our game. He'd guessed Adrian would come, so he'd slipped into servant's clothes, returned to Vance with me, and hidden under the quilt just to lure Adrian in. Adrian had bitten the hook. Crimson flooded his pale face. With his left hand he whipped out a dagger and lunged straight at Quentin's heart. Quentin was no pushover. While yanking me out of range, he whisked a flexible blade from under the pillow and deflected. I watched for a beat, then yelled into the corridor, "Guards! Assassin in the chambers!" At once I stepped in front of Quentin. "You will not harm him." Disbelief filled Adrian's eyes. He drew the short sword back, face-stricken. "Quinn, you what? You broke in and ruined my nightspeak. Wait, that face, you're the masked hero who saved the king today. What exactly are you plotting, striking again at midnight?" Guards clattered in at my shout. Quentin, catching Adrian distracted, thrust 4 killing strikes. Cuts blossomed, blood soaked Adrian's robes until he collapsed on his knees. I threw on a shawl and draped one over Quentin too, playing the doting couple. He caught the cue, squeezing my hand. "My apologies for giving your highness a scare." The moment the words left his mouth, Adrian coughed up another mouthful of blood. I let out a cold laugh. "Take him to the royal, interrogate him thoroughly, find who ordered him to strike at me again." As they dragged him off, he fixed me with a piteous stare. Quinn, have you reloaded too? I regarded him icily. I have no idea what you're talking about, but you've ruined my evening. 1,000 lives wouldn't cover the debt. Trails of blood remained on the floor. I studied them thoughtfully. Quentin noted my expression and sidled close with a wicked grin. Feeling sorry, Highness? He's an old flame, after all, only human. Hardly. I'm disgusted he ever touched me. I scrubbed my cheek and collarbone with a handkerchief. He plucked the cloth from my fingers and gently wiped away the spatters of blood, solemn. A girl ought to treat herself tenderly. Your body's yours, don't let those stains linger. Watching him, I felt something shift. 15. Adrian was flung into the royal. I slipped into the palace that same night to whisper in the king's ear. His Majesty flew into a fury and ordered a full sweep. Yet the scandal now involved Grayson, and the old general had rendered signal service to the kingdom. Raiding his house would chill loyal hearts. I knew the king trusted the general. He had no inkling that during Adrian's last playthrough the enemy collaboration had ridden on Grayson's contacts. The general had long since turned. I advised His Majesty to start the probe with Ivy. Poor Ivy, freshly wakened, was shackled and marched to the dungeons. Though Adrian had yet, this time, to weave his traitorous web through me, I was certain Grayson still harbored secret letters to the border kingdom. Sure enough, agents uncovered ciphered scrolls in the Grayson compound. With iron proof in hand, the king exploded. The entire household was condemned to execution at noon. Adrian, merely a disgraced son, had detonated this storm and now lay under heavier confinement. The second day after his imprisonment I walked into the royal to see him. Tattered and haggard, he insisted he and House Grayson were spotless. Watching the man I once loved reduced to this sparked no pleasure. In Adrian's eyes I had always been a level target, a task, a game. Fail, reload, try again. I showed up and he erupted, calling me Quinn over and over. Say that name again and I'll gag you. You don't deserve it. He stared, voice hoarse. You still remember that life? No further charade was needed now that he'd lost. Yes, every frame. How you approached me, won my trust, murdered my king, had your men deliver me to the troops as a camp reward. Every filthy second is right here. I tapped my temple. His eyes widened, he lurched upright. I never ordered anyone to send you to the barracks as a reward for the troops. How could I ever do such a thing? I watched him with a cold laugh. Oh, so now you're denying it? Whatever. Has a single honest word ever come out of your mouth? He lowered his head, thinking, as if something had just occurred to him. He opened his mouth to speak. But I cut him off mercilessly. Just give it up. You failed your quest this life. I just don't get it. You actually succeeded last time, so why reload and start over? For days, that was all I could think about. Adrian is a quest giver, but last life he'd already reached his goal. The mission was complete. So why did Quentin and I respawn? And why didn't Adrian end the mission? Why choose to come again? Could he be addicted to torturing me? Does he need to watch me die 1,000 times before he's satisfied? He kept his head down, messy hair hid his face. After a long while, he gave a low laugh. Because I regretted it. After you died, I regretted. I chose to reopen the quest line, because that way I could see you again. I shot him a look of pure disdain. Quentin was right after all. Scum is scum. He tormented me to death and now wants a do-over? Cheap late-stage affection is worth less than weeds. Adrian, you're a quest giver, so be a pro and keep your heart out of it. Getting emotional is unprofessional and it ruins lives, yours and mine. I turned and left Royal without a backward glance. Just before I stepped out, Adrian's low voice followed me. It isn't over, Quinn. With a fresh start, I can still make you love me. Dream on. 16. The moment I exited Royal, a tall silhouette stood against the light. I drew a deep breath. Walked toward him step by step. As I passed, he caught my wrist, grinning like always. A princess who dumps me once she's done kinda ruthless, don't you think? I laughed in his face. And just who used whom? It was your plan, your trap, I was only the prop you needed, air. Quentin gave me an odd look. But we've shared a couch. Back in the day that meant drowning in a pig cage. A princess like you might be fine, Highness, but I'm a virtuous lad. I am terrified. Virtuous? Lad? Please. I reached to cover his mouth. He tugged me gently to his chest. Highness, do you despise me? I do. And I'm not shopping for a prince right now. He refused to quit. Then when will you be shopping? I smiled sweetly at him, then let my voice go cold. Only after Adrian is erased for good. Quentin answered at once. Then you need me more than ever. Adrian's target is you, so unless you marry someone else, his quest can't fail. I stared. How do you even know that? Every romance novel says it once the heroine marries another guy, the quest giver gets deleted. So, princess, marry me? My family saved up a fat dowry. 17. Quentin was right. As long as I stayed single, Adrian's quest technically wasn't over. What should have been a lock suddenly flipped. First, the secret letters we'd presented as proof were declared forgeries. Then someone stepped forward and cleared the disgraced Adrian's name. Overnight, every scrap of evidence Quentin and I had gathered was overturned. Plainly, the system was pulling strings, forcing the plot to resurrect Adrian. I was out of moves. I gritted my teeth and took Quentin's advice. I asked the king to grant Quentin's and my marriage fast. The king didn't understand, but he never could deny his daughter. On our wedding day, Adrian was released without charge. I wore crimson court robes and bowed to the elders at Quentin's side. He was actually serious for once. He even tried to comfort me. Don't worry, once Adrian's quest auto fails, you can divorce me. I rolled my eyes. Let's just get through this. Marriage isn't a joke. As the eunuch drew breath to declare the rites complete, an uninvited guest strode into the heavily guarded hall. Adrian himself. Frail and swaying, he moved toward us. Afraid he'd try to stop the wedding, I whipped off my veil, planted a kiss on the smiling Quentin, and announced, rites complete. Quentin brushed the lips I'd just kissed, startled for a second, then pulled me close. Highness, I've waited 3 lifetimes for this moment. Across the dais Adrian's outline dimmed, heartbreak sent him crashing to the floor. I heard the icy mechanical voice again, quest giver 003 Adrian, quest failed. Deletion in 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Adrian vanished completely. I exhaled. I was about to tell Quentin we'd won. But his body began to fade, strips of code rippling across him. He smiled at me. Sorry, Highness. I lied. I'm a quest giver too. My mission was stopping you from dying badly. Looks like I aced it. No. I shattered, lunging for his hand. He disappeared before the court. A consort who vanishes on the wedding day should have caused uproar. Yet, bizarrely, everyone forgot Quentin overnight. 10 days after he vanished, I wandered in a daze. By the 30th day, I climbed palace again. Last life I'd jumped here to reload. I stared at the towering palace, the long alleys below, and leapt. 18. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't in the capital. I lay in a hospital bed, tubes snaking into every limb. Confused, I sat up. A nurse making rounds shrieked. Doctor. Patient 35 is awake. We've got a successful. I gazed around in bewilderment. This was the real world. How? Before I could process, a familiar face stepped in, white coat, roguish grin gone the instant he saw me. I blurted, Quentin. Yes, no mistake. The doctor was him. He froze, eyes rimmed red. Patient 35, Serena, welcome back. 19. 3 days later, I finally understood. 5 years ago, my boyfriend and I went camping, fought, wrecked the car, and both ended up Alex. As research advanced, scientists realized Alex's patients aren't brain dead. They're trapped in another world. Neurolab built a NeuroVR to enter the Alex and wake them. We too became the first trials. And my attending, Quentin, volunteered to enter my dream. Bits of memory returned. I'd had a boyfriend, and when the car crashed, I'd just learned he'd cheated with my best. We fought, and the car wrecked. So my boyfriend, is he? Quentin read my mind. Yes, he's Adrian. Your simulations were linked. Waking you both at once was impossible, only one could wake. So Adrian died so I could live? Quentin said nothing for a while. Not exactly. Adrian's still stuck because he can't let go. You know what I mean. I nodded and let it rest. I stayed in the hospital a month, visited Adrian once he was still deep in coma. After tests and rehab, my family came to take me home. At the doors I turned to Quentin. None of what happened in the dream counts, right? He hesitated, handsome face torn. I offered a bright smile. I know it was all for my wake. Thank you, Dr. Hawthorne. I started to walk away. But arms wrapped around me from behind. A low, husky voice whispered, "Who says dreams don't count? Planning to love me and leave me, Highness? I thought you forgot you're a prince." He chuckled. How could I ever forget? The end. Registration no. YXX 1 year KYYPOCOQMEDME 90 RL.